Alex's world collapsed in a single afternoon, faster than a storm rolling over the horizon. One moment the inbox was ordinary, full of routine updates and meeting requests, and the next it carried a single subject line that shattered everything. "We're restructuring. Your role is eliminated." For a long moment, Alex just stared at the screen, unable to process the words, as if by blinking hard enough they might disappear. Rent was due in 5 days, savings were nearly gone, and the phone kept lighting up with messages. Short, shallow, "Are you okay?" Texts from people who wouldn't pick up if Alex dared to call back. The apartment felt smaller than ever, its thin walls carrying the muffled arguments of neighbors. The weight of overdue letters piled on the counter like silent accusations. A single locket, once belonging to Alex's mother, glinted under the dull light beside an old kettle inherited from Dad, both relics of steadier times. The heart thudded painfully in Alex's chest, a fire alarm ringing in an empty building, screaming but unheard. "I did everything right," Alex whispered into the silence, voice breaking under the weight of disbelief. "College. Overtime. Said yes to every task, every late-night email." Why this?" The silence answered back, colder than any rejection. Then unexpectedly, a knock on the door broke through the haze. It wasn't the landlord or a delivery, but Mrs. Carter, the retired science teacher who lived downstairs, a widow known for her sharp eyes and endless kindness, the kind of neighbor who always kept extra sugar for everyone's tea. She stepped in quietly, but her gaze took in everything, the unopened letters, the pale face, the trembling hands. For a moment she didn't say anything, and then, in a voice that carried both firmness and warmth, she gave an instruction that seemed absurd and yet strangely commanding. "Put the kettle on." Alex blinked, confused, but Mrs. Carter was already moving with quiet confidence. "We're going to boil the truth out of this day," she said, as though the whole mess of fear and failure could somehow be solved by hot water and patience. The kettle began to hiss, steam curling upward, filling the small kitchen with a kind of tense expectancy. Alex stood frozen, wondering if grief had finally tipped into madness, because what truth could boiling water possibly reveal? The kettle shrieked and water rolled into a violent boil, steam rising like a ghost from the past and fogging the tiny kitchen window. Mrs. Carter moved with deliberate calm, pulling 3 simple items from a small bag as though presenting evidence in a trial: a potato, an egg, and a handful of coffee grounds sealed in a small jar. She set them down with purpose, the counter suddenly looking like a stage for something far bigger than cooking. "Life," she said, her voice cutting through the hiss of steam, "is the boiling water. We don't choose the heat, we choose our response." Before Alex could question her, she dropped the potato into one pot, the egg into another, and the coffee grounds into a third, their sudden splashes swallowed by the roar of bubbles. Alex, drained and angry, snapped, "I need a job, not a cooking show," the words breaking harsher than intended. But Mrs. Carter did not flinch. Her eyes stayed steady, her tone unshaken. "You'll have both," she replied, "if you're willing to watch and listen." Minutes stretched like hours, each second ticking heavier than the last, thunder rolling in Alex's chest. Steam wrapped around the room, blurring the edges of reality, while Alex's thoughts spiraled back to the boss's cold voice delivering the layoff, the rent notice sitting unopened, the looming terror of calling family only to say, "I failed." The smell of boiling starch drifted through the air. Mrs. Carter finally turned off the flame and lifted the spoon. She pulled the potato out first. Once firm, now soft, its strength dissolved by the heat. Then she lifted the egg, once fragile and delicate, now hard, its shell concealing a stiff, unyielding core. Finally, she poured the third pot into a mug, and at once the kitchen was filled with the unmistakable aroma of fresh coffee, rich, strong, comforting, alive. She placed the mug in front of Alex and said, "The same heat changed them differently. The potato went in tough but came out weak. The egg went in fragile but came out hard and closed. But the coffee? It did not just survive the heat, it transformed the water itself." Alex stared at the steam curling from the mug, the smell reaching deep into the soul, a silent question pressing harder than any layoff ever could. "Which one am I today?" The question lingered in the air like smoke, stinging sharper than the steam rising from the mugs, and Alex found himself staring at the 3 pots as if they were mirrors of a life already lived. The apartment dissolved into a memory theater, each corner replaying a scene that burned itself into his bones. Childhood came first, The day a teacher with a half smile and a shrug told him he wasn't Harvard material, that he should aim lower, think smaller, expect less. Something cracked inside him that day, and ever since he had worn a thin shell of defiance over a soft, uncertain heart, part egg, part potato, never sure which would win. Then came the first job. Long hours under fluorescent lights, working until 1 a.m. with an empty stomach and dry eyes, telling colleagues, "I'm fine," even as exhaustion gnawed at him. The first real criticism from his manager landed like a hammer, and all that supposed toughness collapsed into dust, revealing how quickly strength could melt under fire. And then the relationship, love that had once been laughter in the kitchen, long walks through the city, dreams spoken in whispers, slowly turned to silence, resentment, and walls so high they felt like prisons. The more the water boiled, the more his heart hardened, until both of them were locked inside shells too thick to break. Tears welled up, blurring the room, mixing with the rising steam, until he wasn't sure which was heavier, the boiling water or his own chest. Mrs. Carter, steady and calm, slid the mug toward him like it carried medicine for the soul. "Sip," she said simply. He raised it to his lips, the boldness of the coffee surprising him, strong yet strangely kind, a flavor that stayed even after the swallow. Her eyes, wise and unwavering, locked on his. "People will hurt. Markets will crash. Plans will burn," she said. "Your character decides whether the heat breaks you, hardens you, or makes something new for everyone around you." Alex's voice cracked as he asked, "So I just choose coffee?" She smiled, soft as a sunrise, and shook her head. "No, you train to become it, one act at a time. You change the room when you enter. You flavor the water." She pointed toward the door, her words carrying the weight of a challenge. "Tonight you'll choose 3 boiling moments and brew." And in the pit of Alex's stomach, a new fear mixed with possibility. 3 moments. Which ones, and what if he failed? That night, the air in the apartment felt heavier than usual. But Alex knew Mrs. Carter's challenge couldn't be ignored. 3 boiling moments. 3 chances to prove whether he would crumble, harden, or transform. The first test came with trembling fingers as he scrolled to a number he had avoided for weeks. His former manager. The fear in his chest screamed to let it go, but he pressed call anyway, heart pounding like war drums. When the voice finally answered, it was colder than expected. "Honestly, you were replaceable." Old Alex would have collapsed like the potato, defeated by words sharp enough to cut. Or he might have gone stiff and defensive like the egg, hanging up in silent rage. But something new stirred, coffee strength, and instead he said, "Thank you for being honest. What skill would have made me irreplaceable?" A pause, silence so long it hurt, and then the manager actually answered. Real feedback, a list of skills to sharpen, and even a referral to a contact. Alex ended the call not broken but stronger. The second test came under buzzing fluorescent lights in the landlord's office, where overdue notices felt like daggers. "I lost my job," Alex admitted, expecting judgment or eviction. Old Alex would have hidden, ignored the calls, or vanished behind shame. But this time he unfolded a paper with a plan. Side gigs already lined up, interviews scheduled, partial rent promised by Friday, and even a proposal to clean the stairwell to cover part of the cost. The landlord blinked in surprise, then nodded slowly. "Deal." The water changed again. The third test was the hardest. Not about money or pride, but about connection. With shaking hands, Alex typed a message to a friend he had ghosted months ago. "I shut down when I'm scared. I'm sorry. I'm fixing that. Can we talk?" He almost deleted it, but pressed send. For a long, painful minute, nothing. Then typing bubbles appeared, then a call lit up the screen, and forgiveness poured in like sunlight through a cracked window. That night, Alex sat at the table with a fresh resume. But this time it wasn't dressed in fake polish or empty bravado. It was sharp, honest, alive. Every bullet point a scar turned into strength. Systems improved, people mentored, lessons carved from failure. At 2 a.m, he placed his mother's locket beside the mug of coffee and whispered to the empty room, "I'm not the potato. I'm not the egg." Then louder, with a steady fire, "I am the coffee." Yet even as the words settled in the dark, a new question gnawed at him. Would the world believe it tomorrow? Morning light crept through the blinds, painting the room in nervous gold as Alex dressed for the interview, heart pounding with a rhythm that felt like both dread and destiny. Hours later, seated across from a panel of interviewers with faces carved from stone, the first question landed with the weight of judgment. Why did you leave your last role? For a heartbeat, silence pressed in, and old Alex almost rose to the surface, the one who would shrink like the potato, weak and apologetic, or stiffen like the egg, brittle and defensive. But then the new voice, the coffee voice, answered with quiet fire. I was laid off. It hurt. It taught me to build systems that survive heat, and to lead people through it. For the first time, the panel leaned forward. The second challenge was a case study, a test of problem-solving under pressure. And Alex picked up the marker and began sketching not theories but maps, real, lived strategies. A 30-day stabilizer to restore order, a 60-day growth plan to build momentum, a 90-day blueprint for customer wins. Each word, each line drawn on the whiteboard carried the aroma of experience, confidence without arrogance, humility without apology. Then came the curveball, sharp as a dagger. We passed on candidates with more experience. Why should we choose you? The room fell silent and Alex breathed deeply, remembering the kettle, the steam, the smell of coffee filling the air. Because I don't just survive hard times, he said steadily, eyes meeting theirs. I change them. Give me boiling water and I'll make it good for the whole team. For the first time, one of the interviewers cracked a smile, just a flicker, but enough to signal a shift. The offer didn't come right there, but something greater did. A sense that Alex had finally brewed into the person he was meant to be. Walking out into the crisp air, he pulled out his phone and texted Mrs. Carter 2 simple words. I brewed. A few minutes later, her reply arrived. A photo of a steaming mug on her windowsill with 3 words beneath, proud of you. That afternoon, an email pinged, a second interview for a bigger role, a better fit. Alex laughed out loud, then did something crucial. He forwarded 2 freelance leads to friends still struggling because coffee never keeps the flavor to itself. And here lies the rule etched into the soul. You will meet boiling days, layoffs, heartbreaks, failures, diagnoses. The heat is real. It does not ask permission. But the water never decides who you are, you do. Don't crumble like the potato. Don't harden like the egg. Transform the water. And when people ask how you kept your soul alive in the fire, you'll smile and say, I didn't keep it. I shared it.